So, and that's what drove it. And we talk about Ukraine not joining NATO. Well, that's really kind of shadowy, because Ukraine is a de facto NATO country. It's awash in NATO weapons. Had 150 NATO military advisors. Of course, Biden just admitted that we're training Ukrainian troops in Poland. So this doesn't excuse what Russia did, but it was completely predictable. And there was a column I wrote a couple of weeks ago where I quoted a 2008 WikiLeaks cable that had been leaked, written out of Moscow, that predicted precisely what would happen, including the fact that Ukraine would be the flashpoint. So it was all understood, but it was, I really think, done for profit and perhaps this assertion of U.S. global hegemony. But it was very foolish. It was unnecessary. I don't think that Russia would have invaded the Ukraine if we had honored our promise not to expand NATO. And under the Clinton administration, of course, we promised that we would not station NATO troops in Eastern Europe, another broken agreement.
Yeah, and it seemed evident that the U.S. is losing a grasp on our hegemony, and there a lot of things showing that the petrodollars being dropped in some instances, the trade with China is now of nations is now far larger than trade with the U.S. We're kind of just losing our economic stranglehold on the world, and so I think a lot of that plays into what's going on right now. But like you said, like you mentioned, the Ukraine. I want to play this real 1 minute clip. This is your colleagues, journalists, but these are the ones that are allowed in the White House press corps room. And this is a clip of them all demanding that the White House basically arm Ukraine more and push us closer to nuclear war.
Than what Ukrainian officials are saying they need the most.
It sounds like, we're pretty dug in on our position when it comes to the no-fly zone, when it comes to the MiGs, despite this growing bipartisan call in Congress to shift a little bit. So, to put it bluntly, is Zelensky wasting his time tomorrow asking for these things?
President Zelensky is going to be speaking to Congress tomorrow. He's been pushing for fighter jets, a no-fly zone. You have to hear some of those same requests tomorrow as well. Has the administration shifted on that at all?
Really, though, calling for a no-fly zone. They're a NATO member. They share a border with Russia. How do we view their calls for a no-fly zone?
And on President Zelensky's address tomorrow, of course, he is expected to ask for more assistance, as my colleague noted. A lot of the U.S. positions on that haven't changed, as you just said, when it comes to the no-fly zone. But on the aircraft specifically, the Pentagon said last week that Secretary Austin said they do not support the transport of fighter aircraft at this time. Is that still the United States?
So you get the point that they are just endlessly pressuring the administration to have a no-fly zone, to send more weapons over there. I mean, it's insanity from my point of view.
Well, a no-fly zone is an act of war because it means you dominate the airspace, and if Russia attempts to violate it, you shoot down their MiGs. That's war. Even the Biden administration doesn't want to go to war. But in terms of weapons, sure. The idea is to turn it into Chechnya, or turn it into the old Afghanistan, where, very cynically you make Russia bleed. But of course, the people who really are bled are the Ukrainians. That's the goal, to create a quagmire. And the amount of weaponry that is being pumped into the Ukraine from the EU and NATO is just mind-boggling. Germany has lifted its ban on the exportation of weapons, has doubled its defense budget, has said that it will now devote 2% of GDP to defense. That will make Germany the third largest military in the world after China and the United States. It's just insanity. And by shutting down Russian media, of course, you're not going to hear the Russian position. The fact is, Russia has many legitimate grievances, including, I would argue, a demand that Ukraine remain neutral.